Do do do. Hey everybody, welcome to an all new. Hey everybody. Hey everybody. I think I'm live, but am I? Let me know if anyone's out there. And let me know how my audio is. Because even after all these years of doing this professionally and improfessionally, I still don't know what audio is or how it works. But assuming my audio is fine, and I've certainly made that mistake in the past, so I may be repeating this in just a few minutes, but assuming my audio is fine, hey everybody, welcome to another All Wings Considered spin-off stream. I am Loaf, and I am basically just trying to get back into the swing of streaming by we've got people in the chat, and it's my wife and Shingo and Mufasa. Hey everybody. Anyway, I'm trying to get back in this swing of streaming, and I figured I would do it with kind of a more informal take on the show where we just pick up a piece of Wing Commander media and examine the heck out of it. And today, that is the second part of the Confederation Handbook, which we talked about just a few days ago. It's essentially the manual for the Wing Commander movie. I won't repeat any of that part because we've got plenty to talk about. But as I said last week, it's divided into increasingly confidential sections. The first one was the public information that anyone in the Confederation could access, and we talked all about that. And tonight is the first set of more confidential documents, and we'll look at those and talk about them. And because I could not help myself, we've got some media. AD has provided some never before seen footage from the Wing Commander movie, and we'll share that a little bit later when it's appropriate. But before that, how is everybody? Pretty chill week here. Nothing exciting to report at all. Allie and I, my parents renovated their pool after 30 years of letting it be a thing for toads and rats and things to live in. So they had the whole thing rebuilt, and we've been over there swimming a lot, and it's great. I'm getting more energy and better shape, and got to be around to talk about Wing Commander for longer. But that's been our week so far. I guess it's only Tuesday. Is it Tuesday? It might be Wednesday. I don't know. Time has kind of lost all meaning in the last couple of years. But before we start talking about the book, and I should have thought to set this up in advance, I did go ahead and add everything from the first section to the timeline I've been working on. Okay, go away, Barbie logo. To the timeline I had been talking about in the first episode. So here it is. So we've gone up from about 700 entries to almost 1,000. We're going to hit 1,000 probably with the set we do tonight. So it's getting to be a very, very elaborate timeline, especially the prehistory of the Confederation. Look, we have all this stuff from present day, or even before present day, to 22nd, 23rd, 24th century is filling up, and then the early war stuff with all the Pilgrim events. So yeah, the timeline is getting bigger. I put a link to that on Twitter earlier. I'll share it with anybody who wants, and anybody who wants to help out, you're more than welcome. It's a great pointless project that is certainly keeping me entertained. Wow, there's actually people in chat. Hi everybody. Yes, happy Taco Tuesday, Shingo. Hello Sebastian. Thank you for welcome back. I'm very happy to be here. And let me bring up the... See, I've already gone from, I'll do this really simply. I'll have like one or two that can bring up a PDF and you can see it. And now we've got like 30 images preloaded. So, yay! Hey, there's the handbook. All right, back at it. So last day, it was like 4 days ago. Jason, the great Jason McHale says the lighting looks better. I did absolutely nothing. I think it's just that the natural lighting outside, I don't know, or maybe it's my tan because I'm a fancy tan Ben now. Toast, hi Toast. Good to see you. So the handbook, here it is. We just scroll through this bottom part. We went through all the unclassified materials, the interview with Admiral Tolwyn, the children's history of the Pilgrim War, and so on. And that's all super interesting. One follow-up I mentioned, which I posted on Twitter, was one of the folks who was watching, Suzanne Auer on Twitter, who's an actual space historian type. She's like it's a great account. You should follow it. But she pointed out that this picture here of Mars was from the Viking 1, the orbiter portion of Viking 1 in 1976. And so I thought it would be fun to look up and see where all the other public domain photos that were used throughout this book came from. And indeed, like, this is also from Viking 1, the Phobos picture, which they photoshopped. I don't even know if you can see it here, but wow, I can do that. They photoshopped a Mars base onto Phobos. Phobos, yeah. So that's where Doom takes place, which is probably the joke at the time. But I went through the whole book and I pulled out where all of the astronomy images came from. Most of them are either from Hubble or from the Voyager probes to the outer planets. This is a composite of different photos taken by Voyager 1. And anyway, I had a good evening with Google reverse image search looking those up. And there's going to be at least one really good one of these days that I will point out to you. The other one I wanted to point out, which is something I never really had a very good appreciation for until I went back and read everything word for word, working on the timeline the other day, is where's Tolwyn? In the Tolwyn article, he talks about his strategy being in charge of the Kilrathi War. Let me find that. They ask him why the defensive posture, why isn't the Confederation attacking? And it's kind of an interesting question because there's no setup for that before this. Why would we assume that there was a defensive posture? So we're establishing that right here. And then why the defensive posture? Why the long wait? Isn't there some way to take the battle to the cats? The answer is calm but resolute. Rest assured, we are not sitting idle behind our defenses. We'll have some unpleasant surprises for the Empire when they come, and if they don't come, we'll have some even more unpleasant surprises to deliver to them. Nor must it be imagined that our long siege has been in vain. Kilrathi losses over the last decade have been astronomical, at least 8 times our own, and possibly as much as twice that. The Kilrathi do not fear death, but you may believe the Empire has felt the losses we've inflicted upon it. It is my opinion that if we can break the next Kilrathi invasion, it will be physically impossible for the Empire to mount another for decades, and that the time will be right for pacification by force if necessary. Something hard and cold enters his eyes. We've already taught the cats respect. I fully intend to teach them fear as well. So that's an interesting setup in 2654. There's this idea that the Confederation has been fighting a defensive war all this time. And it's sort of parallel to that idea in World War II, where, why is the United States focusing on Europe instead of the Pacific? Why invade here instead of there? It's kind of an echo of that, as Wing Commander often does with World War II history. But it's also just sort of this. The article goes on to talk about how he's taken this strategy because of how the previous war was fought, the Pilgrim War was fought, and he can't blame the generals for that, but he would have made different decisions. And that's also kind of a truism throughout military history. It's never we shouldn't have war. It's this is the war I'm going to be good at. So I love that. And thinking about this setup, I connected it to a couple of other things that are in this section of the book. The timeline also the first thing I connected with was the numbers in the Wing Commander Prophecy, Origins Official Guide to Wing Commander Prophecy, which has just absolutely insane casualty figures for the war, which is something like 2.1 trillion humans and 7.8 or 7.6 trillion Kilrathi. We'll have to look up the actual numbers, but it's around there. Which is just, what was the story there? Why were the Kilrathi casualties so much higher? It's an impossible number either way. We could do a whole stream about conflicting casualty numbers for the Kilrathi War, but what was the backstory there? And this is it. The Confederation was essentially allowing the Kilrathi to attack and attack and attack, do the Zin-style scream and leap thing and wear down their forces. This book, and this book talks about that in its history of the Vegas, it's the battle for the Vega sector and so on here in the timeline. But I also noticed throughout the ship entries on the Kilrathi, it points out, for instance, on the Sevar dreadnought, that when the war began, these dreadnoughts were flying under the flags of all the different clans. And in disproportionate numbers, they are now the ones that are encountered are from the Kiranka, the Emperor's clan. And there's this idea sprinkled throughout that the Empire, the Emperor understands that they can't keep up their losses this way, but he has a strategy too. He's uniting the clans and taking over the military forces himself, and that's something that we're going to see throughout all the 2654 stuff, from Wing Commander Academy to the Peter Tellep novels. It's to stuff way back in the original Wing Commander. It ties it all together in a really interesting way, and it also explains weird little things like the mention in the ISIS manual that Blair and Maniac, who are like the 13th and 17th, 13th, 14th, I forget what their ranking is, but they're on the list of top aces of all times. They're the only ones who have, 4-digit number of kills after Custer's Carnival, when Kilrathi tactics changed. So this is something that's been percolating at least through the last 5 years of the franchise, and we're only seeing reflections of it. I suspect there was some Bible or some internal decision or something that, there's something this is echoing off of, but we've never seen that document. So it's a cool story, and the more you read this over and over, you kind of, it puts it together in your mind, and then we put it out in some other form like that timeline, and there you go. We've got a better understanding of the start of the war. I'm jumping back to the where we were yesterday. Here we are. So here is the index of stuff we're going to look at tonight. We've got Pilot Nose Art, which again is kind of this one kind of stretches the credibility of what exactly it is he's looking up on the internet. Did he just search for Pilot Nose Art and an AI picked the 7 pilots he's going to know the most? And yeah, so we'll see some nose art. We're going to see pilot profiles for the Tiger's Claw. This is going to be super interesting to anybody who ever wondered how much respect to give the first episode of Wing Commander Academy, Red and Blue. And the answer is a lot of respect, and we'll talk all about that in just a minute. Marine Boarding Protocol. Doesn't that sound exciting? Deck plans for the Tiger Claw. Look, we got naval blue. Isn't that the coolest kind of thing you imagined as a kid? The cutaway views of a starship, or I remember having actual Navy ships. My dad grew up with that sort of thing. His dad was a naval engineer, so there were always warship blueprints. But every nerd in the world remembers the cutaways of the Enterprise, starting with the famous blueprints from Franz Josef in the 70s, which is just one of those absolute cool things in fandom, where his daughter loves Star Trek, so this grumpy old professional draftsman planned the Enterprise for her, and it became a best-selling publication at the time. It was in the New York Times top whatever. It was the 70s fandom fascinates me, and so much of what we see and what we love about our series, whatever they are, comes from that kind of prototype that the Star Trek fans developed back then. That's very interesting history to me. Mufasa says the novels at different times mention clan politics a decent amount, but he doesn't recall it ever being mentioned in a game. That's right, actually. One thing Wing Commander does a very, very, very good job of is having a very, very simplistic story in the game. The games themselves, and people never believe this, but were designed first to show off technology, not to tell a story. And they tell the story you get in a game like Wing Commander 3 is very simplistic. It's not like Star Trek, where you hear, think about Wing Commander 3. How many of the actual ship names are mentioned in the game in the game dialogue? Maybe the Excalibur, the Hellcat once when Rachel tells you how the loading system works, but you don't have a nerdy technical dialogue at all on them. So you don't hear about Kilrathi clan politics, or how the Confederation works, or how many star systems there are, any of that. that all gets grown up by this like meta, the external layer, which is the manuals and the official guides and the tie-in material like this, and you build your universe like that. So that's always fascinated me. Hello, some other folks joined. Howdy. Good to see you. We are just reading a book together. Yes, this is the first page of the index. We've got Flight Deck Protocol. Who doesn't want to buy a book of Flight Deck Protocol? You go to see the Wing Commander movie, you're like, that was amazing. Like most Americans, I enjoyed this film. I gave it millions of dollars, and now I want to celebrate that world. I hope somebody made a list of fake rules for how to behave on a aircraft carrier. Well, they did. 80th Fighter Wing casualties. We've got a chart of cap ships coming up, and then Kilrathi Tactics, which is where we're going to have our very special video tonight, or several videos tonight. So let's take a look at. And by the way, look at here's another one of these money saving image tricks. They've just taken a reverse polarity image of a character on the flight deck for the protocol article. All right, and here it is, the pilot nose art for the Wing Commander movie. Yeah, absolutely. The novels add to the setting so much. I mean, so much of what a hardcore Wing Commander fan imagines is at least part of what Bill Forstchen imagined when he read the Wing Commander Bible. So it's kind of interesting how someone who never played the game shaped so much of the world of the game, but in a way that the people making the game probably never really cared about. And it's also one of those things where it's in all of our heads, and you just step out just a little bit. You think, any casual player is like, yes, the game where you shoot cats. There's space cats. And yeah, that's all it has to be. But there's this whole secret world that's just for us. And Toast says that's why the printed stats diverge so much. Yeah, a big part of that is, as Chris Reed just explained also, it's the booklets would have to go to print weeks and weeks before the game would actually go gold. So you'd have the developers working overtime, and in cases of things like Wing Commander 4, well after weeks after overtime, to get the game out. And once the game was locked, it could go to duplication, and they could be shipping copies in a couple days. But all the printed material needed to be ready. So Claw Marks was printed and ready 6 weeks before they said, okay, stats are done, balancing is done, game is out. So that's why almost never the stats almost never make sense. But you can also reverse lens, and you can look at earlier builds by looking at those earlier stats. And in fact, we have a great document in the CIC's archive that we found at the University of Texas, which in I think Warren Spector's collection, which was different versions of the Wing Commander 2 ship stats with handwritten notes on them throughout development. So you can see, oh, here's where this ship was cut, here's where they decided to drop this weapon, here's where it's super interesting once you put it all together to see how a ferret becomes a ferret. Yeah, nothing from QA would ever make it into a manual, at least until the next one. That is a shame to hear that the novels are hard to find in Australia. Almost all of them are available digitally now. I guess you mentioned you have almost all of them except the movie stuff, which are the ones that are not officially available digitally. Although, if you check out Pix's archive, Pix's Origin Adventures is the website. I think I linked to it last time. He has scans of everything, so if you really want to read the Wing Commander movie novel and Pilgrim Stars, you can do that. But let's look at these. I'm still doing it. Let's look at these. Let's look at this nose art for just a moment. Where did this come from? The nose art was all created by the team, by the pre-production folks in Luxembourg. So this is not coming from the artists who, the Wing Commander artists. This is coming from the team in Luxembourg that doesn't really know the Wing Commander game, but knows Chris's vision for the movie of being World War I or World War II carrier air combat in space. And so this is what they came with for all the pilots. These appear on the sets. These were all physically put on fighters. When they would shoot a Rapier that was Angels, they would slap this on the side. They're very hard to pick out in the movie itself. You can occasionally see them. like Maniacs is, I think you can see the CG version of Maniacs when he's doing his initial patrol with Rosie, where he impresses her by spinning around for some reason, which is actually very easy to do in the game. So I don't know why. I don't know why that had her so excited. But and these were used throughout the marketing, especially Blair Maniac and Angel, which are obviously the higher quality of the bunch. Rosie's one. First of all, let's talk about the ridiculous fact that her call sign is apparently Sister Sassy, which that's kind of edgy. And her ad looks like it looks like a cigarette ad to me, with the palm tree and the desert. I don't know. I'm kind of glad that we don't necessarily see that one. Oh, the sound balance is better this weekend, Chris said. I didn't do anything, so good. Anyway, the one of these that I most wanted to point out, by the way, one thing we're going to talk about in just a minute is that the pilots in the movie, as far as the folks doing these knew, that was their name. Hunter on all his props is Lieutenant Hunter. In all the dialogue, he's Lieutenant Hunter. Knight is Lieutenant Knight. Whenever in just the concept of the movie as it was made in Luxembourg, the name is Knight rather than the call sign. So keep that in mind when we talk about the pilots themselves in a little bit. But the exception is Bishop, who is Polanski in the movie itself. He's Lieutenant Polanski. Take what you will from that. But he apparently his call sign is Bishop, and the reason for that is that he's at the chess game in the movie. I don't understand. Do the pilots just love chess? What's the connection there? Yeah, they gave Rosie's call sign Sassy, which is it's very on the nose, and okay. The one of these I wanted to point out, though, that entertained me was Hunters, which is also used, I've seen in set photography. It was used as the squadron, the bomber wing logo. So I don't think either are ever visible on screen. But there used to be this fantastic Twitter account before Twitter became an absolute hell. That was Corel Gallery 1994. And it took one of those old early CD-ROMs that had thousands of little vector images of I remember my dad had one of these at the time. You would get this like thick phone book like index that you would look through to find the clip art you wanted, and you would have to go to the CD and get this DXF file. But there was this great Twitter account before everything went to hell that would just randomly convert and share Corel Gallery photos. And one day it messaged out this, which, you know what? Me move. Okay, I can't move that. It's Hunter's bird. So it's not just the Confederation Handbook folks who are using this public domain or easily accessible clip art imagery to do actual work. The Hunter and the Bomb Wings logo is a falcon from Corel Gallery, the 1994 Corel Gallery specifically. And that got me thinking. So I looked through the bring the bird back. I looked through the gallery thinking, oh, I bet we can find the missile or the torpedo or whatever it is. And sure enough, they reversed it and changed the color a little bit, but I guess the color is to match Hunter's patch. But it is an anti-satellite clip art of an anti-satellite weapon. There you go. And now you know the rest of the story. All right. Well, I'll let everybody recover after that incredible shock, and we will move on to. Do you want a closer look at any of these? Maybe I can zoom in. Blair's is the weirdest because what does this even mean? Why is Blair a dragon? Like he's got a cross that's kind of like the Pilgrim Cross, but it's not a Pilgrim Cross. Like none of this imagery seems specific to Blair. Maniac. I mean, it's great. I will believe that's a Maniac. Angel's got like a sexy angel broad with a. I like that it's a gun like the rapier, the big neutron gun. I remember early in Star Citizen, everybody was accusing Chris Roberts of wanting to have these big rotary guns on everything, and they're There is proof. Oops, whoa. Fighter Wing logo. Sister Sassy. I do believe the later stuff, just when it lists her call sign on her profile on a couple pages, it is just Sassy rather than Sister Sassy, which is slightly better. Knight gets a Ace of Hearts for some reason. Yeah, maybe the Tiger's Claw Squadron just all loves chess, and that's why he's Knight and Bishop, and they sit around playing chess and making fun of people when they visit. That could be your headcanon. I can't control your headcanon. Remy says Maniacs is pretty much spot on for him, and I think he is right. Although, what is Maniac personally that he was like, cool, I want a cool creature? You don't really know Maniac's inner life so well. Toast just mentioned the Scimitar's, quote, Gatling mass driver, which I was just talking about the other night on Discord, to have a pointless aside here. If you look at I was just pointing out that if you look at claw marks, only the human ships call it a Gatling mass driver. When it's for the stats for the stats for like the Grotha, they're just mass drivers. And I've always wondered if that was intentional. Are they actually manufactured by the Gatling Corporation? And of course the Kilrathi ones aren't. Or did somebody just forget that they were doing that by the time they got to the other part of the manual? We'll never know. But we can speculate endlessly on Newton live streams. All right, let's look at this next page, which I have forgotten what it's going to be. This is Blair and Maniac's final recommendations from their flight school. So theoretically, if you remember the beginning of the Wing Commander movie, the Diligent is bringing Maniac and Blair to the Tiger's Claw for their first assignment as commissioned officers. We'll leave some wiggle room there for their various adventures on the Formidable and on the TV show and such, which we'll be talking about right now. But this is great lore. It's a note to Captain Sancy of the Tiger's Claw from Major E. Gonzalez from the 145th Training Wing, Confederation Space Forces Flight School in Sirius. And you're asking, you're saying that's not the Academy on Hilthros. What's going on there? And I've been working a lot on this recently with the Wing Commander 1 and 2 strategy guide, trying to figure out exactly what the timeline is. It's important to note that Blair and Maniac are graduates of the Academy class of 2653, not 2654. Up until 2651, the Academy was a 4-year program, just like the Naval Academy at Annapolis, which is largely patterned on. Much like in World War II, the Academy was, as a war emergency in 2651-52, I can't remember the exact date, but it's on that timeline. The program was sped up, summer breaks were eliminated, and now you spend 2 years at the Academy straight and 1 year off doing on-the-job training on a destroyer-sized spacecraft or something small. Often a safe sector, learning from people who are combat veterans, which you remember way back when Commander 1, that was mentioned when Commander De La Guardia and the Formidable have to be escorted, and Blair takes the mission. Blair or Prankster, whoever you are, take the mission because that was where you did your on-the-job training. So they graduated in 2653. After pilots graduate from the Academy, they don't immediately go and fly superpowered space fighters. They have to go for advanced flight training. The Academy is the process by which you become an officer. Nobody at the Naval Academy right now is going to go and get an F-35. They have to go to significantly more training. In the case of Blair and Maniac, they went to the flight school on Sirius, which is where we meet them in the first episode of Wing Commander Academy, Red and Blue, where they are learning to fly actual fighters, and they are getting ready for their transfer to the Tiger's Claw, which, of course, Talwyn comes and gives them a little bit early because he's setting up a command school, and then that command school is Wing Commander Academy, the series. That is where we are now. It's just before the movie. They have finished their flight school. presumably the episode Red and Blue has just happened. Admiral Tolan has come and talked to the. By the way, Major Gonzalez. I mean, my only theory here would be that he has to be this guy, who is in fact voiced by Mark Hamill in the first episode of Wing Commander Academy. He's clearly Maniac and Blair's flight instructor. He's there teaching them at the start of the episode, and then he's the one who's overseeing them during the mock combat that is our adventure. So that's got to be Major Gonzalez. And again, also voiced by Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill and Tom Wilson. And my brain, you can't think Tom Wilson without your brain trying to say Biff. But, and I'm sorry to him for that, because I know how much he hates it. But Tom Wilson's character, Tom Wilson and Mark Hamill both did a lot of fill-in roles on Wing Commander Academy. When you had somebody who had, one line in the background or 2 lines or something, like the Tiger's Claw voiceover, or the Captain of the Tiger's Claw, Captain Nelson. Folks you don't regularly see, but maybe they'll appear a couple times. Mark Hamill and Tom Wilson did a lot of those voices, so the major character was voiced by Mark Hamill. And if you go back and watch the episode, there's no way not to see it once you know it's Mark Hamill, because it's just him doing his Mark Hamill voice. But the other great thing about this, and you can look at their records because those are cool. There's such a tempting thing in all world building where you say, of course, my main characters are the best of the best at everything. And so I like that we got this report card where, Blair is 477 in terms of GPA at the academy. His flight school GPA is better, but he's still number 23. But he's really good at flying, because he is really good at flying. So he's good at marksmanship. He's good at navigation, because he's a pilgrim. I love that kind of detail. And I will be critical of the next page of this, so stay tuned for that. The best thing about this that made us so excited at the time, because in 1999, the debate was still whether or not Wing Commander Academy, the animated series, was something that mattered. You go back and watch it today, and you're like, what the hell is this? This is an intricately detailed love letter to all things Wing Commander. Why would anyone ever have a problem with this? It has the original cast and the original ship designs, and everything makes sense, and it's well written and adult. But back in the day, of course, it was like, oh, we're all serious teenagers. How dare you show us a kids show? We hate this. We hate this. As with any online culture battle between sci-fi nerds, it boils down to, well, that's not canon. You can't prove that's canon. And one of the reasons that is always immediately such a big thing and such a solace for people is because, of course, you can't prove that something new is canon. It's the thing that references everything previous. You have to wait for the next thing. So if it's 1996 and you say, hey, nobody mentioned the events of Wing Commander Academy in 1990, well, of course not. But you know how we are. They're terrible. And people are doing this right now with like Star Trek and Star Wars and Dune and anything you can imagine. AD is here. Hi, AD. But anyway, the thing that was great about this is the first place in Wing Commander continuity where the events of Academy are mentioned again. And it's such a cool way to do it. Basically just redescribing the episode in terms of their pilot review. And it says here, both Blair and Marsh were already blooded in combat. During a routine training flight, they surprised and destroyed a Kilrathi blockade runner. During this action against a superior force, both pilots displayed skill, courage, and discipline normally found only in more experienced warriors. It is because of this remarkable achievement that I recommend Blair and Marshall be assigned together for their first combat tour. So that's Academy. That's the first episode of Academy, Red and Blue, where they end up by battling the Kilrathi blockade runner or scout. I've got a picture of that guy here somewhere. I need to learn to do my pictures better. Yes, there's the blockade runner being destroyed in the first episode of Wing Commander Academy, and referenced here in text in Blair's flight school bio. My words are today. You will note one of the kind of cheap elements of this is we don't have unique cast photos for a lot of these pictures, for a lot of this content. So obviously Blair's flight school record from earlier in the year somehow have the picture of him in the rapier on the Tiger's Claw deck. But this one is eminently forgivable because obviously that's what he looks like. There's one later on that's just egregious. I don't think we're going to get to it today, but you'll know when we get there. I'll just say it because I'm interested in hearing myself talk. It's the Admiral Wilson for his bio. Once we get to Tolwyn's personal files, he the only still of Ken Bones in the uniform they had that wasn't one of him in uh, the Pilgrim Trader outfit was him literally firing the gun on the deck of the Pegasus, trying to blow up the Navcom AI door. So his personal profile with like his information about his golf game for Admiral Tolwyn has a picture of him firing a gun directly at the viewer. We'll see that next time. Well, you can't see if he has blue hair. Wearing his space hat. I've got that prop somewhere. It's not within reach, but I can bring it next time. All right, let's check out Maniac. Now here is where I'm gonna slap them on the wrist and tell them that they were bad, because here in this book and I'll tell them they're good here. First of all, the flight school logo, well, good and bad right here. The flight school logo, that's a cool thing to have, except when you zoom in, for some reason, there's a tiny tiger's claw. The tiger's claw ship emblem is at the center of the flight school logo for some reason. I don't know why, but it's there. Chris Reed says Admiral Wilson is just well known for firing rifles in the office. Okay. You know what? I actually do have right here. This is what it looks like. This is one of the rubber rifles from Wing Commander 4, which just happens to be here because my cat knocked it on the ground in a horrifying cat moment a couple weeks ago. Our new... We have two black cats, Lumi and Sully, and there was a bag incident. Lumi, we were sitting in the living room, and suddenly Sully shoots out within like full Halloween form, back arch, tail puffed up to 5 times its size, and then he's chased by his sister, she had put her head in a shopping bag and gotten it stuck in the handle, and she was going nuts, just running back and forth. We could not catch her. And then she went silent. We couldn't hear her. We couldn't find her. And we got so worried. We started tearing apart the entire house. Was she under the bed? We looked under the bed. We cut into the box spring of the mattress to see if she'd hidden up there. Allie took everything out of the closet. I moved everything in my office. I was terrified that she had hung herself with a bag somewhere and my little girl was going to be... we were going to have a cat corpse, and we were very paranoid about our cats. I'll tell you that right now. But finally, I noticed that Wing Commander 4 rifle was on the ground, and from that, I was able to figure out that she had hidden herself between the blinds and the windows on the far side of my desk, and she still had the bag attached, but she had clearly been so traumatized that she gave up being a cat. She was just looking at the ground with her little face and not reacting. So I took the bag off her, and she slithered into the other window and just sat there for hours. I tried giving her treats, give her something to play with, and she just did not want to be a cat that night anymore. But everything was fine. She wasn't hurt, and she was back to being a cat the next morning, and she remains a cat right now. How did I get here? I feel like I was talking about the flight school logo. Anyway, weird flight school logo. I also, the picture of Maniac here is like a headshot they took to make posters for the movie. There was a company called, I think, Scorpio Posters that put out 2 Wing Commander movie posters. Do you remember if you go to the mall at Hot Topic or Toys R Us or something, there would be these racks of cool teen posters, and then you could flip through the example ones, and then you take out the tube from the bottom. They did a couple of those for Wing Commander. One was Matthew Lillard, and one was Freddie Prinze Jr. as their characters. They have the nose art in the bottom corner, and it's just them looking at you. And I don't think the teen girl audience for the Wing Commander movie ever quite materialized. They're kind of hard to find these days, but Also, no one really wants them. I had the Blair hang in my room years ago for years. I think I've got both of them rolled up somewhere. But it's so hard to photograph a poster. You just want to leave it in the tube, and then you're just some jerk who collects tubes. Uh, anyway, the thing that I want to insult about this page is, well, first of all, the Academy record is great. As you can see, Maniac is even better at academics than Blair. That's a great take, and he's just bad at safe. You know, their whole character comes across in the comparative report cards. But the crummy thing is that almost all of this text, especially the addendum particularly, is just repeated from the previous page. And that's such a waste of space. You know, we talked about, and we're about to see, how this book only got to be half in color. And here's this whole page using the same text again. It seems wasteful to me. I'm gonna criticize that. Yeah, the poster school, I assume they're old school. Maybe if you go to a mall today, there's like Fortnite and I don't know what kids today like. Mr. Beast? Maybe there's posters of Mr. Beast. Or like Squishmallows. Poop? Kids seem to be into poop these days. I bet there's some way to get posters. Maybe you like 3D print them, but in 2D. Anyway, that's the pilot profiles. It's interesting that Blair can read his own flight records, and that he can read Maniac's flight records. It seems like you shouldn't be allowed to do that. Yeah, malls today. I feel like all the rich people malls became regular malls, and all the regular malls closed. They just closed the regular mall where I first saw Wing Commander 3, and I can't believe they didn't put up like a monument or something there. Yeah, Five Below seems like the kind of place that would have them. If you... Oh, and one of my favorite ridiculous things that sci-fi people love is when you restate a story, but in like technical in-universe terms. So I'm still just over the moon excited that they retell this, you know, what we saw as kind of a fun children's cartoon with the questionable ramming incident. They, you know, re-describe it as a routine training flight, and what we see is like a Karathi destroyer is suddenly a blockade runner, and oh, okay, you know, wow, why were the Karathi so close to Sirius? Well, it was a blockade runner. You know, there's so much patching up going on in this sort of thing. All right, let's see what's next. Okay, here are, and look, we went black and white. This was the cutoff to half the book. Oh no, what a tragedy. In like a perfect world, they would come back and they would reprint this book for the Wing Commander movie's 50th anniversary in full color with like new documents and so on, original art, but sadly not to be. Here we see the Tiger's Claw logo for the first time that we should. We talked about CS last time, and CS versus TCS last time, so I won't go into that. But these are the biannual pilot evaluations, theoretically by Jürgen Prochnow's character, Commander Gerald, the guy who's racist against Blair's. And these are cool. It's an interesting technique showing what one movie character thinks about others, because it does kind of color you watching the movie a little bit. And I like seeing the kind of bureaucratic, like, real process that would happen behind the Wing Commander movie. You know, you see the movie itself, and it's a bunch of people who are angry at each other for the purposes of drama, and they all have psychological problems. And then, like, you're just seeing the paperwork they have to fill out about each other. It's kind of cool. It just makes it more of a real world to me. But I don't think I have to call out anything in particular in Angel's bio. It's pretty much the standard. Gerald is specifically worried about the they never existed thing. Not enough to actually do anything about it, but he puts it in her review. And again, we're using headshots again. I'm not sure specifically where that Angel photo is from. Possibly her first appearance, where she's wearing the flight deck smock. All right, let's look at the rest of the crew. And here we go, call signs sassy. Also, apparently Rosie is short for Rosalind. I don't know any Rosies IRL, so somebody else will have to tell me if that's right. But again, I think Sassy is kind of a silly call sign. Also, the date here, I am personally curious, is 2654.02, is that 002? Is that January 2nd? Or is it January 20th? Or is it February? It shouldn't be February because usually a month is preceded by a slash. And it is a headshot, but I can't tell if it's her headshot or if it's the headshots they took on set. Like Rosie here is certainly a shot they took on set. She's in the uniform, but you can't really tell with Angel because it's all dark. And again, this is about how great she is. Don't let Maniac kill her, which unfortunately they don't listen to. But these are interesting too because each one has a little bit of history. They talk about a mission where she shot down 3 enemy planes, and it just builds up that history of the Tiger's Claw crew. And I like anything that adds to our timeline that's not the adventures of Colonel Blair. I like seeing, you get a little bit of the area around that's the other characters having separate adventures that have nothing to do with your hero. Hi, Lone Wolf. Oh, Sebastian said he just read Angel's action points. Let me go back and see what those are. Oh yeah, it's the part I was talking about. I am concerned about Lieutenant Commander Devereaux's encouragement of the custom that pilots, quote, disremember any battle fatalities. It may be a way of coping with the high mortality rate, but the captain and I are concerned that it's not psychologically healthy, and it's definitely disrespectful to the final sacrifices these pilots have made. And that's the sort of thing where it's absolutely the tie-in author coloring the source material, and it's very common in adaptations of scripts where the person is like, this doesn't really make sense, but I have to tell it anyway. For the absolute height of that, check out the novelization of the first episode of Star Trek Enterprise, Broken Bow, by Diane Carey. She was absolutely fed up by she'd been doing Star Trek novels for years, and she was absolutely fed up with the quality of the script. And it's just the characters will stop and talk about how something they're doing makes no sense and then do it anyway, just varnishing that. And she was not invited back to write another Star Trek novel, but it's always fun to point that stuff out in tie-in material. Especially because the people, it's works for hire. The Chris McCum and David Ladyman and so on were obviously intimately connected with Wing Commander, so they're a little bit of a separate case. But somebody like Peter Tellup is given a script and told, here's money to make this into a book. There's no particular innate love for the movie itself. It's just getting through it. And some people will say that's a way to that's a reason to discredit something. I say it's a reason to make something is much more interesting to me. What is an outsider's perspective on this thing, and where do they take it? I don't want to read an identical novelization of the Wing Commander movie. I want to see how somebody else reacted to what they saw of the Wing Commander movie. Oh, Sebastian says, never mind. I read that as dismember and not disremember. Hi, Thorn. I'm doing good. How are you? I think immediately of Captain Thorn of the Tiger's Claw shows up in like Freedom Flight and a couple of other places, and is forgotten whenever we put Admiral Tallwood in charge of the story. All right, so here is Rosalind Forbes. Lieutenant Forbes should be given more command responsibilities as they become available. She should be encouraged to take the appropriate courses in preparation for advancement. That is every personal review I've ever had is like, what can I do to advance my career? Like, I could take some courses, and then you never hear about it again. So, believable. Lieutenant Ian St. John, call sign Hunter. And this is another one where this is one I guess I prepped you for earlier, mentioning that in the movie itself, in terms of the movie as produced in Luxembourg, it's Lieutenant Hunter rather than Lieutenant St. John. Same for Knight, which we will see in a minute. But it's just an interesting choice that the tie-in stuff was able to say, oh no, we'll take his name back from the game. And speaking of taking the names back from the game, one thing people always note, and I did not point out, is that Devereaux is missing an E in the movie version. She's Dever I mean, I guess we pronounce the same, but in the game it's Devereau, which is one of those things where, left unchecked, fans tend to come up with just utterly idiotic explanations, where it's like, oh, the Enterprise on Strange New Worlds looks 30% different from the original Enterprise. That's a legal reason. They were legally forced to change. Not a thing. There's not such a thing as 30% of an image. No one is like, well, I own the rights to the name Devereaux in the context of Wing Commander and nothing else. They just didn't care and got her name wrong on the prop, and they had to repeat it everywhere. Let's see. Oh, 80 said she's wearing the blue overcoat, but it's a very low resolution picture. I don't have a higher one. Well, find the one you do have where you can, if you can see it, and stick it somewhere, because I would be interested to see that. I'm sure everybody else would too. But Hunter, again, it's cool that he gets to be called Ian St. John instead of Lieutenant Hunter. For his action points, again, we're just shading everything that is in the actual movie. His anger management problems. Should be urged to take CDI training, interpersonal conflict resolution, and anger management in particular. And I like that the first officer and the captain of the Tigers Club apparently understand everything that's wrong about the pilots enough to write about them, but not to ever do anything. And then that is the most corporate ladder sort of thing I've ever seen. This seems incredibly accurate. Oh, you're formerly Citizen Thorn. Okay, I remember you. And you moved from Maryland to Florida. I moved from California to Maryland, so I guess we just missed each other. But that sounds fantastic. Oh,
I brought you water.
Oh, thank you very much. Allie brought me water. Okay. You can say hi if you want.
No, that's okay.
That is delicious. Thank you. Really into water these days. This is the content you wanted, right? Anyway, Hunter needs anger management training. And of course he does. And here is Lieutenant Adam Polanski, a.k.a. Bishop, the one pilot from the squadron who is an original character in the movie. And if you read through his bio, you will see there's not much interesting about him. As in the movie, he's another guy in the background. But, you know, I love this stuff. And like this will go in the next chunk of timeline that I'll do tonight and tomorrow. You know, he's only been on the Tiger Claw for 3 months. And Gerald has changed his opinion several times. So it's just interesting working out when, who was where. Especially with Tiger's Claw pilots, because we know so many Tiger's Claw pilots, and we know so few of their fates. Where is Archer? What happens to Archer after Academy? Who knows? My headcanon is that she married Maniac, and it's one of the marriages that was mentioned in the Wing Commander Prophecy not Ultimate Strategy, Origins Official Guide to Wing Commander Prophecy. Let's see. And Knight, again, the name for Knight is different from the game. He's Kumalo instead of Kumalo, E instead of E. Yes, Toast mentions he's heard that 30% thing. What do you think 30% of an imaginary spaceship is? And who do you think is getting that spaceship money? People. And you understand, it's this basic human need to explain to themselves the things they see, and then this second basic human need not to be wrong when you tell other people about it. And here's a nice nod to Wing Commander 1. Lieutenant Kumalo should be encouraged to continue training new pilots, which is how he ends Wing Commander 1. They ask him if he wants to come teach at the academy. So he has this same story where they're siding with the cat lover guys from Wing Commander 1. Remember, Maniac and Hunter accused him of being a cat lover, and he's all angry about it. He should talk to the ship's counselor to discover there are any preset prejudices against combat or the role of a fighter pilot. Not really what you want in your review of what a fighter pilot you are. Alright. And that was it for the pilots. If if the movie had, I'm trying to think of how to put that. I'm surprised there's not a Spirit in here. The script has a role for Spirit. I don't think they ever shot her, at least not in a form we would recognize. But I'm kind of surprised they didn't do a bio of pretend Spirit too, because they had the Krant and the Salty, but they must have known they didn't have a background Spirit by this time. And here we have Marine Boarding Protocol. And again, is Blair just looking this up because he knows what's going to happen in the movie, that there is going to be a Marine boarding process? And basically, what this is basically, you're all familiar with the fact that the Wing Commander movie totally comes apart when we board the Kilrathi ship. They basically cut out the reveal of the traitor. There was going to be a knife. It was supposed to be the climax of the movie, and they ended up cutting it because they didn't want any of the traitor stuff or the reveal. So if you watch that section of the movie, it's just the shot to shot aren't even in the same room. It's just edited together to make it look like Blair boards the ship normally and takes an outcome AI. As it was initially planned and considered at this time, you would have seen a bunch more of that. And one of the big things that tie-in people were trying to figure out is, well, why is Angel there? Why is Blair there? I remember by the time they were doing the novel, Peter Tellep wasn't sure if you were going to be able to recognize Angel or not, but he had been warned that she was in the scene, so they needed to come up with an explanation for why she was with the Marines. And here we have exactly that same impulse, which is about how the commander will appoint a Marine, Naval, or Space Forces officer as mission commander for the operation. Just trying to set this official rule for why the thing you see makes sense. And for Peter Tellep, the explanation we came up with, and this is why we have lore groups today that get all their ducks in a row between releases. But at the time, the story that I came up with for Peter Tellep was that she had trained on a captured Dorkier at the academy, and they knew that it would have a similar interior to the Concom. Osmade says, Spirit's role in the script might have been an oversight in some ways. I don't think she had any dialogue and was maybe written as someone's one-off wingman. I think that's right. All right, so here are the Marine boarding party stuff, and this is cool because, and this was cool for Felix Face of this book, because it's really fun to, they had a bunch of pictures of guys in Marine armor standing around. They had, in Austin, Texas at the time, Freddie Prinze Jr.'s Marine armor, so they could take it apart and they could take pictures of all the pieces, which we'll see in just a minute. And basically just go nuts writing a pretend sci-fi document that had to conform to a little bit of on-screen stuff, but it's mostly purely imaginative. What's a Marine demo team? What does this piece of red leather that we see in the movie do? Why does the scene go in the particular way it did as intended? Well, first you skewer the bridge, and then the engine room, and then the weapon control. It's just fun to go into, or even follow up a movie like that with what the rules are. You do see it with Star Wars all the time. What's the Jedi philosophy, or how are stormtroopers trained? And it's cool to have just these little over the top bits, similar to the jump point thing last time, where we just see stuff like, from the perspective of the world. I don't know. I love this stuff. And it goes on, and we get cool, we talked last week about how nerds love designations for things, and this thing gives a designation for every piece of Marine equipment. We've got the C-524 space armor, the C-512 combat helmet. We've got dimensions for all the little bits, because they had literally this suit right here, and they could go, we'll just measure the knife, and we'll measure this pouch, and we can put that in there. It's wonderful space filler for if you're a background material writer, and just cool that it's accurate to the prop. And there's just all these mentions of other, the C-545 external web harness. And this is how military people do stuff. We all listen to everybody go on about, the AGCM. I'm not even going to embarrass myself on that one, but military guys and sci-fi. If they had that like epic handshake meme, it would be nerds and war guys, and they love designations. Yes, AD says SOP is something that comes up in the shooting script, and has a deleted scene around the idea of standard operating procedure, and that it's one of those things you would see in an actual military thing, an actual boarding process. Also, space armor is just a great pulp name for something. I don't care what universe you're in. Life support pack. We all know this because the action figure has them. Um, Actually, I think these same images are the ones they provided to Bob LaMonaco at X Toys for the Marine Blair action figure. I should have brought one of those out. I'll bring a Marine Blair next time. Oh yeah, Toast has it exactly. Sometimes it's great. AGM 65F. Okay, I know what that is. M2 don't know, could be anything. Uh, that is absolutely right. And look at the copy for that. The C532 connects to the C512 combat helmet via an umbilicus hose of monofilament reinforced plastic. That's great. That's great lore description. Um, but yeah, if you ever wondered in what situations you can pose your Marine Blair action figure with Star Wars guys, there's all the details. And this is an error. I think you can read it either way, but I realized reading the space armor one that it is an actual error. This is not the picture of the Marine helmet, which we just talked about how the C512 helmet could be connected to the outfit. This is the pilot helmet. And the description here is kind of neutral, but it does have all this. It's capable of dispensing painkillers, stimulants, anti-rat or anti-agent medications. Um, can target slat data things. I think the thing that gives it away here is that the visor underlighting is provided for illumination, and that there's no underlighting in the pilot's helmets. So this was meant to be the Marine helmet, and they just got it wrong. C-47 assault rifle that matches the designation used in the novels. So still love the novels. I think it's actually M47 in the novel, but it the same general idea. And there is the rifle with the grenade launcher under it. I wonder what popular sci-fi franchise they took that from. Without tape this time. But there you go. It has 20 micro grenades, and here's the survival pistol, the sidearm that Angel takes from Hunter to aim at Maniac. Which again, why doesn't she have one? She just got out of her fighter too. Shouldn't she have her sidearm? She's just being dramatic in that scene. 25,000 individual firings. I don't know a lot about modern guns, but I suspect that's on the better side. The C275 utility knife, not shown. It's just great lore, and I'm probably going to say that for a couple pages because it's just great lore. A C643 explosion. Oh, that's the explosive satchel charge. And again, that's one of the ones that's in the script, but they didn't have any stills of, so they included it just in case. Same with the knife. And I think neither of them actually appear in the final film. And another one, a medium cutting torch, because we originally were going to see them cut in. Maybe that is in there. I don't know. AD can tell us, but I think it's probably not. Where you see them actually cut into the hull of the Concom. And what am I gonna do right after this? Because I just realized it will be incredibly fun. I'm gonna make a list of these numerically from like C47 to C888, and then I'm gonna search the novels for C dash and add the couple of others that are in there. And we're just going to have a cool list of technology for no reason. Maybe we can find a color picture of each one from the movie. 80 says, there's lots of aliens influence in the production design of the movie, especially with regards to the Karathi ships, Marine stuff. It's not even in the specific design, though it is. It's also in how they shot everything. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, aliens especially influenced all of this. Fossa says pilots under psychological review for encouraging pilots to dismember the deceased. Don't get pilots' pistols issued to them. Dismember either. All right, here we go. The much vaunted Tiger Claw blueprints, which who doesn't love this? Who doesn't love poring over entirely made up pretend spaceship parts and figuring out? I mean, how many things inside the Tiger Claw do we see in the movie? The bridge, the map room, which is adjacent to the bridge. We see Maniac's quarters and Blair's quarters. We see the rec room and the flight deck, and maybe sick bay not in the final cut. The captain's quarters, Angel's quarters, a couple rooms. But here we have this chart that shows us where hundreds of different things are, and suddenly from those couple of sets they built, we have this whole ship in our imagination. And there are some really fun details in here. You can find the bridge, the comm room, everything that's mentioned, and there's the mess room. All those missiles that it shoots out the side at one point in the movie, they're figured out for this. And there's a second page of it too that shows it from above. And I've always wondered if they've got little diagrams for, apparently there's a Corvette that's stored aboard the ship, which is where they end up putting the Errant or the Diligent. The Diligent is an Errant class ship, and I've always thought that this looked like the White Star from Babylon 5, and that the little ship diagrams all look like squashed white stars. I don't know what they're supposed to be. They don't look like rapiers. They don't look like anything else used in the movie. But I do remember at the time, this is a specific thing we asked Chris McCubbin when we met him back in 1999, and he was nice enough to have dinner with us. We asked him, did you work with the guys doing the cutaway poster? There was this just spectacular point in 1999 where they released a press release of all the companies that were licensing stuff for the Wing Commander movie. Half of them never happened, and half of the, they all lost money, which sucks. But all the cool stuff we got, the action figures, this book, the posters I mentioned earlier were all listed out with descriptions of this company has the rights for this, and it was from the licensing expo, whatever the licensing expo in 1998 was, and one of them was a Tiger Claw cutaway poster from a company called SciPubTech. And of all the Wing Commander movie stuff, I think that was probably what people were most excited about. If I don't know if folks know SciPubTech or not, but it was a company that published beautiful cutaway pictures of mostly Star Wars and Star Trek ships. Everybody knows the just absolutely famous Enterprise D cutaway. It's like the ship's hull is kind of sliced off, and it's this beautiful combination of a painting and a diagram. And I believe it was a guy named Matthew Cushman. And he has a brother Chris Cushman who does a bunch of those others. But they did an AT-AT, they did the Millennium Falcon, they did different Enterprises, the Defiant, Deep Space Nine, and so on. They did a Voyager. And it was one of those things where like, oh my god, it's incredibly cool that they're going to be a Tiger Claw cutaway poster. And it's both incredibly cool that it's going to exist and that it's going to stand up there next to the best in the industry, the cool stuff that we would have put on our walls anyway. By the time the movie came out, the poster had not come out. There was a tiny picture of it in Previews magazine that showed that it was a real thing that was being made. It was like half completed. The like external painting was done, and you could see the cutaway was not colored, but it was you could see that there was like it was a tiny picture, but you could see that there were diagrams and decks drawn in there. So we asked Chris McCubbin, if this thing actually comes out, did you guys work with the people doing the poster? And he said, no, they didn't even know they were doing the poster. So unfortunately, many unfortunate things happen after that. The poster never comes out. It gets delayed and just never comes out. SciPubTech goes out of business. Nobody hears about it. Years and years later, I managed to contact the guys who did the Star Trek posters asking if they knew about it. I contacted the guy who did the original Enterprise D, and he was incredibly nice. He said, I didn't do that. My brother Chris did, and it's unfortunate it never got printed. It was finished. We did finish it. We got paid for it, but they just never published it. But hey, I still have a copy. Do you want to see it? And it's beautiful. Maybe it's contradictory that it does not match the decks on this one, but it's such a cool picture, and we have such a nice resolution image. A good friend of mine was kind enough to give me a printed version of this that looks wonderful. This is up at the CIC. Absolutely look it up. It is such a cool piece of art. Just an opportunity to really study the inside of the tiger's claw, and you just want that on the on the wall of your bedroom. My wife does not want that on the wall of my bedroom, but it's a beautiful poster nonetheless. Um, Yeah, see, I got to this point in the book, and I realized I have to keep showing this like tie-in media. We're going back to the old show already. All right. Oh, and by the way, if you're in chat and you want to talk about anything, just let me know, and I'll answer any questions. We ain't fancy on this one. I'm also on Discord, but I see it looks like YouTube chat is activer tonight. Activest? All right. More sci-fi rules. These are the deck rules for the on the Tiger Claw. You know, the which exists specifically to mirror the scene where Maniac and Rosie almost crashed their fighter's landing. You know, these are all the rules they were breaking. Particularly introducing the character of the deck boss, Master Chief Petty Officer G. Peterson, and you see the guy in the movie running around giving orders, and now you get his personality. You know, he's you know officious. These are my rules, and you're gonna follow them. You know, it's why Maniac and Rosie were in so much trouble, and Angel had to go and talk to this guy, which gets expanded in the novel. She tells him she'll help him. It has a little runner about how Deck Boss wants to be a fighter pilot, and she promises to give him some training time if he lets Maniac and Rosie off the hook. And I just love when a tie-in person adds stuff like that to flesh out anything. But here we just see what a hard ass he is, and we get a couple of cool pictures of the tiger's claw itself. I keep losing my cursor, is why I'm like ah. And this goes on for 2 pages. Again, we learn about the magnetic field, how you can't go at it without a suit. It's all setting up for stuff that happens in the movie, but it's so broad and there's so many sections to it that it's not one specific thing. It's like not like a list that's like, don't run into me with a fighter, don't go to try to save Rosie. It's 50 things, and those two are mixed in here. And that's how you do world building. You mix in the pill with a big wad of cheese. I'm good at analogies. No hot landings. All craft will approach the deck with engines and primary moving thrusters off. The one thing that's a little bit odd about this is we look here at the first page, and remember we saw this guy right here in the negative, that guy right there in the negative image in the index. And we see him in the movie. He's the guy on the deck who does the flags. But that is not Master Chief Petty Officer G. Peterson, no matter what this is implying. Peterson, who was a credited role in the movie, is this guy. He is, of course, named after Eric Peterson, who was worked on Wing Commander 4 and then was an executive at Digital Anvil, and you all remember from the early days of Star Citizen, I'm sure. And I believe he's credited as something on the movie, maybe a producer. But the movie script originally had a bunch of background characters who had their own little stories that they were going to weave in and out. They show up in the novelization. They are almost entirely cut from the movie, except for a couple of flashes. But they were all named after Digital Anvil's like top brass. So there was a Rodriguez and a Peterson and so on. But originally you would do kind of like a lower decks thing where throughout the movie you would kind of cut back to the guys working in the torpedo room, the guys working in the engine room, the guys working on the flight deck. And that all got removed as we were... Yeah, that's the 80s. That guy at the top isn't the deck boss, just part of the flight crew. Yeah, it's Peterson there. That's the actual deck boss. So that's who wrote this book. One fascinating thing you can spend many an evening doing with the movie, and AD and I can confirm that, is looking through the footage and figuring out basically these rules from what you see on screen, because they figured it all out behind the scenes before the movie was, there's all these different colored outfits and different uniforms and different designations, and they're all working according to a set of rules. So you can go and figure out how all the different departments and what the colors mean, and we have often have a good time doing that on Discord because we are wild and crazy guys. So if anybody ever wants to talk about that stuff, please please do. And I mentioned that because you can see such a good view of two of the guys in their smocks with these different colored designations on the back. Unfortunately, this does not tell us what the colors mean, but I think we have a pretty good idea now. All right. I tweeted about this a couple days ago before I even thought to start streaming about this, but this is an absolutely fascinating document. This is the semi-annual report to Confederation headquarters detailing casualties among the 88th Fighter Wing assigned to the Tiger Claw. By the way, this is where we learn that it's the 88th Fighter Wing, essentially. It's on artwork on the set itself, but this is, I think, where it's only really stated. And that's interesting to know because obviously that's the same fighter wing that we are serving in Wing Commander 1. So it's really good color for the universe. And this is something Wing Commander does only sparingly. You very rarely know what unit you're actually serving with. Like Wing Commander 3 is the 36th Fighter Wing on the Victory, but that's only mentioned like once in the novelization. So it's one of those, you find these little bits and you apply them where they make sense. So Wing Commander 1 is the 88th Fighter Wing. So this is the chunk of months leading up to the movie. 075 is actually the day the movie starts, I think. So this is the day before they would have to add Rosie to this list. And it's fascinating for all sorts of world building reasons, like how many Confederation pilots does a carrier lose in 3 months? Well, here's an exact list, and you can kind of zoom in on this, and you can have all these little environmental stories told in the background, like Cue Ball is killed in a mission, Dragster is killed in, most of these are just someone who dies in a mission, presumably their wingman makes it home, or it's an average Wing Commander mission. They were killed by the Karathi. Some of some of them have little stories that are told, and some of them are just based on the dates. You can see when something went wrong. Like here on 2653.299, Fat Lady and Ratbert both are shot down. Obviously there's a story there. That's an entire patrol that was wiped out, or there's a really heavy battle with the Karathi that day. And so you put together all of these little bits and pieces just from the dates and the names. And in fact, the last two, which is William Carnival Jefferson and Boss Man, those match up exactly the details in the letter we saw last week from Angel to Boss Man's wife, where they were damaged. They were in a flight of 4 fighters. They were damaged. They looked at a Karathi Corvette with Dralthi escorting it. They wiped out the Karathi, but their fighters were damaged. Carnival's especially. Bossman sent the other 2 pilots home and then covered Carnival's retreat himself. They were both ambushed and killed. And all the details are right there, but they're presented lens totally differently. For instance, I think the letter from Angel doesn't mention Carnival's name at all. It just is another pilot, because from the perspective of writing to Bossman's wife, that doesn't matter. She's not writing with the other guy. And here you learn it on this document. I don't know, but it's a fascinating one to me. I also am super interested in the call signs themselves. I think obviously most of these names are Tuckerizations, probably for the team at IMGS that we will never understand. We don't know. They're not familiar origin names, but they're obviously somebody. Some of them are very, very 90s. Like I mentioned, Ratbert. I guarantee you that no one is calling themselves Ratbert today, much less in the 27th century. There's one here that Schlitterbahn that sound you read it and you're like, is that some Nazi thing? And no, it is a large roller coaster in Central Texas, or a water park in Central Texas. And obviously that's it. If you were in Austin in 1998 writing this book, that would be where you went to cool off. I think there's like multiple Schlitterbahns now, but it's a Texas thing. And yeah, there's just all these cute little bits and pieces in here. And obviously Excelsior must be a reference to Star Trek. There's a Kilroy, of the famous Kilroy was here. Goes back to World War II. There's a Kilroy in Wing Commander 2. I know somebody who pointed that out when I mentioned this on Twitter. And Grinder here, her name sure means something different now. But just a great document. And obviously, this is like 30 dates and events for the timeline. And we'll throw it in the water of that timeline, and they'll spread out throughout the last year, and just add all these. Yeah, Ralph Mouth. That Mufasa pointed out Ralph Mouth. Um, Sebastian says, I wonder how long it is before a call sign can be reused by another pilot. This actually comes up in Origin's Official Guide to Wing Commander Prophecy. Hey, I said the name right the first time there. Where I think it's Falcon, the Biofur, I think it's Falcon, mentions that I think it's a lady, maybe it's a man. I don't want to misgender Falcon. The pilot named Falcon, whoever they are, it mentions how they had to wait for the previous Falcon to die before. No, it's is it Snake? It might be Snake, who's Billy Kane. That he was Jazzy Snake he until the Snake name was freed up. I'll have to check. It's one of those two, or somebody else can check and make a fool of me. But it does come up, the idea that you have one call sign at a time, and that once the person dies, somebody else can have it. Somebody was probably just waiting for Maverick, and prophecy happened. All right, let's check the next page. Okay, this is a cool one. I mean, what nerd ever would not want this image? It's the comparative sizes of the different capital ships in the movie, and it's awesome. I love it. Who wouldn't love this? This image specifically was initially created for the movie itself by that initial pre-production team, both show how the ships and the storyboards would work, and then for the artists in Austin and elsewhere to start working from. The initial version is included in the movie's style book, which was basically the licensing book that was sent out to all those people we mentioned earlier, the poster guys, the cutaway guys, everybody who paid to make movie stuff. And I've got that version here. And it's kind of interesting because you can see that the silhouettes for the ships change pretty significantly, especially the Snake here, which kind of becomes the Concordia. The old Concordia kind of disappears, and then both the Dreadnought and the Snake here become these much more like tubular alien ships over time, and the Concordia takes a bunch of the design notes that were initially intended for the Snake here. That's why when you look at a lot of the movie's early concept art, you'll see ships that look like that first and third one that are intended to be Kilrathi rather than Confederation. In fact, earlier in this very book, I think they show up in the Durasteel ad. The Durasteel. Should go back. Go back here. I think they're photoshopped into that Durasteel bomb shelter ad, where it shows you're supposed to be safe from the Kilrathi ships, and you're looking out the window, and there they are. There was that guy. Yes. See, look, the Kilrathi ships there are the original silhouette for the Snake here, rather than the finished one. See, this is what you pay for. The real details. Giorgio says the Confederation ships remind him of Earth warships. They do. They're very much. I think the designs very much start out as kind of like man o' war rigged ships, and obviously the Concordia in particular became a Iowa class battleship style ship, which I think is cool as hell. And then they must have wanted the Kilrathi ships to look different, to look more alien, and they do. And I always love these things. What a coincidence that it's every ship you see in the movie and no other ships. There had been some plans at some point for other human background ships, but they never got close to those. Although you see them suggested in the message from Tolwyn in the movie, where you get some smaller ships diagrammed. In the actual cutscene, though, it's all. In the initial cutscene where we see the ships berthed at Pegasus, it's a mix of Bengals and Concordias. In the big fleet shots at the end, it's all a bunch of Concordias. And I counted them recently. If you check the CIC news or my Twitter from, I don't understand how time works, but a couple months ago, we actually went through and figured out exactly how many are in that shot, which is a hobby that Star Wars people love doing, and I kind of wanted to take up for us. So, counting spaceships in blurry cutscenes. It's what's for dinner. All right, now here is our flagship article, not because it has any particular detail that we super need to point out. It's, yet another one of these tactical updates on particular, basically this is our excuse to talk about Kilrathi. This is the book's take on the Kilrathi xenoanthropological profile included in Victory Streak. I mean, it's the same writer writing again, and you can see a lot of the beats about how they evolved and the tactics they used on their savannah plains 10 million years ago. That all matches up pretty much with the game stuff. But this is a good excuse to talk about the movie Kilrathi, and AD has some special videos that I'm going to share of the movie Kilrathi, everyone's favorite parts of the movie. We'll get to that in just a second. Mufasa said, could any of these ships land on gravity wells? Gravity wells, are you thinking like a jump point or like a planet? I'm actually not sure either case. I think about these ships. We certainly see the Concordias and the Bengals docked in at Pegasus at the start of the movie, so they're, but it's like a wet dock rather than a dry dock. My guess is it's probably Star Trek rules where nothing larger than a Corvette lands and takes off from a planet. But we don't see for sure most of the time. I mean, we see the Tiger's Claw certainly in enough situations where it dispatches boats to a planet rather than landing itself. So I think it's the idea is that the big ships will align more off a planet rather than land. There's actually some good lore way back in the Kilrathi section about how a Seavar class dreadnought was captured unarmed in a dry dock, though. So there must be facilities somewhere. In fact, let me go back to that because that might actually answer our question, depending on how it's phrased. Let's see. An unarmed but otherwise completely functional ship taken in dry dock early in the Epsilon Initiative. That doesn't say where, so it's not clear if that's like a space-based dry dock or if it's a planet itself. So my gut still says planet, but I don't think there are specific rules. So if somebody does a new Wing Commander where the Tiger's Claw lands on a planet, that'll be fine too. And it's kind of what it was with Star Trek. I grew up being told that the Enterprise was built in space and could never go on a planet, and then they did the J.J. Abrams movie where its version of the Enterprise was built on a planet. And I remember everybody being really angry about that, and I understood. It's not a reasonable response to have some creative decision like that, but I distinctly remember being about 6 years old and my dad giving me one of those AMT models of the Enterprise, and he was just eagerly explaining to me that the Enterprise is so big and it's not aerodynamic and it had to be built in space because it could never be built here. And that's a cool bit of fanon. So change is scary to everyone, even Ben's. Let's see. Yes, that's a good point, Georgios. The frigates in Wing Commander 4, the Carnarvon class frigates, can't land on planets. They have to have the shuttles bring people up. And Mufasa points out that Concordia landed on Vespus. So let's get back to the Kilrathi. And I mentioned last night in chat that I was thinking of doing a stream today. And AD said, can I get you any videos? And I said, I think I was I swam for about 4.5 hours yesterday, and I was absolutely dead exhausted. And I think I was barely coherent by the time I was in the evening on chat. And I was like, that's so nice, but what do I tell them? What do I want for this? And they're like, this is the part where we talk about the Kilrathi. I said, give me some Kilrathi stuff. And I think that may have been all I said, and I passed out shortly after that. And the next morning I found that he had made me, first of all, a clip of the Kilrathi scenes that are seen in the movie itself, which comes down to just about 3 minutes of Kilrathi. He had found a making of a making of clip, a couple minutes long, about Ed Rice, the guy in one of the Karathi suits. He went on to become one of the avatars in Avatar and so on. And he got me he put together a never before seen collection of the Karathi clips that were cut from the movie. So in the interest of seeing some cool stuff that we may have never seen before, let's check these 3 videos out, and you won't have to hear me talk for a couple minutes. And let me know if these are too loud. This is the first time I've done media like this on the stream in many years. But let's get ready to look at some Karathi. Here's the Karathi that make it into the movie. Everything with just the Karathi.
Scylla's got her.
So that was it. That was, for all we complain about the Kilrathi in the Wing Commander movie, that was really all you see of them in the finished version of the film. And obviously a lot of the scenes of them were cut because of the quality of the costumes. Others were cut because all of the traitor stuff had to be removed to make the movie work without Merlin and so on. And that was what we got. And I guess, we can talk about them a little bit. Obviously, everyone wants to know what happened there. Not a week goes by when we don't have a chat in Discord, somebody asking why didn't they just use the costumes from the game? Why do they look like lizards? Where is their hair? And there's good answers for all of that. They're not satisfying answers, but one thing folks I think don't understand is that you couldn't just reuse the costumes from the game even if you wanted to. The Wing Commander 3 costumes were designed to look right at 320 by 168, 15 frames per second. And even there, it's stretching credibility. There are plenty of shots of Wing Commander 3 where you can see it looks like a dresser with a towel blanket over it. They look incredible to us because they were the first time we saw something like that. They look incredible to us because there is so much interference and compression and lack of resolution between us and the costumes. They would not work in a giant film, even if Chris Roberts wanted them to. And all indications are he did not, that he was not particularly a fan of the Wing Commander 2 style, where the Kilrathi were just big cats. And, a thing people rarely believe is that he didn't particularly care about the Kilrathi being cats in the first place. Wing Commander 1, as pitched, was they're mutants, they're evil mutants. And, somebody on the design team said, why don't we just use cats? And nobody cared. And, if you think back to Wing Commander 1, you see the Kilrathi very limited in the original game, too. There's a couple drawings in the manual. There's the single VDU image where they taunt you. And then there's a couple cutscenes where they're tiny little samurai armored guys. And that's it. The modern conception of the Kilrathi as being a lion and a tiger and so on, that's all Wing Commander 2, which Chris executive produced, but he was off doing Strike Commander, so it was not his. It was not kind of the result of his work. And when he got back to Wing Commander, he was young and he wanted it to be his thing rather than a thing. So he has always been trying to rework the Kilrathi to make them work in live action, to make them work in high resolution, and to make them distinct rather than just being the Kzinti. And the movie was an example of that, but also an example of that failing. He had a money-conscious producer from Fox who insisted they use actual creature effects from a budget company. He believed the whole time that the movie would, and this has always borne out throughout his career. He has thought that, if I can't do it now, I can show how good what I can do is, and then someone will fund the rest of it. So there was definitely this thought that I can make this incredible movie, and if the creatures don't work, we can get the money to do them as CGI. That didn't happen, of course, because the film finance world is a lot crueler than the video game financing world was at that time. And he was essentially administratively stuck with these Kilrathi. And they did a lot of work to make them work as best they could. They added a lot of that green smoke in the various cutscenes to cover them up. They cut what we actually see of them to the bone. And this was the result. I'm missing some chat, and that is rude of me. Mufasa says he loves the subtitles. The subtitles are awesome, and they are a great example of something that is intended to distract the viewer's eye. They came up with those cool animated subtitles because they draw you away from the big rubber cat faces. I remember when Chris Reed and I went to visit Digital Anvil the day after the movie came out. One of the first guys we met was an artist whose job had been to basically work on the Kilrathi faces to make them more expressive in post-production. And he was so proud of himself. And having since seen the raw footage, I'm proud of him too. Because, you could even call this a successful failure. Because once you accept that you were stuck with these big rubber Kilrathi, they did so much around the edges to try to not make it ruin everything. Did it ruin everything? Possibly. No, it's not the thing that ruined everything. Lots of other things ruined everything. In fact, I don't even... Yeah. I mean, better to have... It's kind of threshold rules with the Kilrathi. Sometimes a terrible thing is so bad in science fiction that it becomes emblematic of that thing. I wouldn't want Voyager without Threshold, or Next Generation without Shades of Grey. You want those low points that make you appreciate the process. I do anyway. So our next clip here is from a guy named Ed Rice, who was in one of the Kilrathi costumes. It's a little bit low res. It was put on his YouTube a couple of years ago, and it's just cool to see him walking around in the costume and what it looked like behind the scenes. So I will share that with you now and stop talking.
Come, AI. Come.
Self-destruct malfunction.
We're headed towards ground control. There. Where the hell are you? There.
What the hell?
So there you have it. Be sure to visit ediblerice.com, the home of Ed Rice on the internet. But that's fantastic that he had archived all that and put it online. And it's so cool to see what the Karathi looked like without the space foam in the air, and what that sets were actually going to look like, and how much more awkward this could have been. And did you see the flags on the backs of the different warriors, which I was talking about last time, that show their different clans and battle victories and so on? It's cool ideas for the Karathi, but it just does not work in the end. And they try to avoid, they swerve to avoid everything, and you end up with what we got. Remy asks, in Wing Commander 1, weren't there Karathi faces in the ship-to-ship chat? Yes, there was one universal Karathi face that was used in the ship chat, the green VDU chat with a Karathi. It's the same one. There's no special one for any of the aces or anything, or a different one for the capital ships. In Wing Commander 2, they have a couple of them, and then after that, they have a bunch. But there's basically one Karathi face you see in Wing Commander 1, and that's it. Somebody was asking about the movie quality. The Blu-ray is the highest resolution one that's been released. I doubt there's a much better transfer on file anywhere. One thing I got during the All Wings Consider hiatus was an actual Wing Commander movie print. So we could do a higher resolution one someday with it, maybe? I don't know. Hopefully someone will do a UHD version someday, but I kind of doubt it. So, yeah, that was our first two videos. We have one more. You can actually go to some other pages of this, It's cool stuff in terms of Karathi lore, how they think, how their brains work, what their behaviors are. Karathi Psych Report, basically. And again, you see we have all these set shots of the Karathi warriors to decorate it with. Obey without question. Focus on the strongest. Here, this is actually a quote that you have in Victory. This is a quote from the oath that Hobbes has in Victory Streak. I serve my Horian lord. With my tongue I offer fealty. With my claws I unsheathe victory. I think it originates in Voices of War. But maybe that's what they thought the Confederation Oath of Service was when they were doing the cover. Who knows? Responded. This is all. It's all plays into how the Karathi behave in the movie, particularly the parts where like Maniac was supposed to taunt one and it was supposed to come and attack him, and a lot of what this is, shading and describing and enhancing doesn't appear on screen in the end. But it's all interesting, and if you're writing about the Kilrathi, this is an absolute wealth. There's a little bit of history in here we'll be adding to the timeline. And what a boarding party is like, what their weapons are like. This names the kind of distinctive Kilrathi rifle used in the movie The Door Shock. This was the Kilrathi costume they had at Digital Anvil, so they got photos of that. The stuff they're describing here, like the helmet visor covered with polarizing agent, that was for the costume of there was a Kilrathi fighter pilot you were going to see in the Dralthi, and they totally cut him out, but he had like a very distinct visor, and they felt they needed to explain that here. Mufasa says Wing 1 had cutscene. Yes, they did have cutscene Kilrathi. They had the ones who execute the Mopox. They had the two guys in armor who shoot up the Marines attacking Brimstone if you lose. They had the Admiral killed in shadow at the end of secret missions. The ones who attacked the colony of McAuliffe at the first mid game. But they're all tiny. 5 pixel by 5 pixel, and they're mostly just armored figures. They could be a mutant in there. It's very, very, very broad look at the Kilrathi Wing Commander 1. It's Wing Commander 2 that narrows it down a great deal. And the Priestesses in Secret Missions 2. I guess I would consider Secret Missions 2 to be the next production, because it was a different group of folks. So, Kilrathi outfits. The Dorchok laser rifle. I wanted to point this one out. Did I get a... Yeah, so the Dorchok, which this says means striking bird, is the distinct Kilrathi like hand rifle. You if you have the action figures, you know it too. You see it throughout the movie, like combat scenes. It was introduced in Wing Commander 3. If you look closely at the guards in the background of Wing Commander 3, they have a very similar rifle prop, and I have a photo of the prop here. Looks like that. So basically this idea that the Kilrathi have this custom rifle is something the movie took from Wing Commander 3 and made it its own. And that is it for the Kilrathi section. So let's end that by showing you another video from AD. This is the one you've all been waiting for. He was nice enough to collect from rough cuts of the movie, bits and pieces, all sorts of footage of the Kilrathi that you don't ordinarily see. So let's have me stop talking again, and we'll check that out. If I can figure out where I put the video.
The Navcom AI is reconfigured to your jump drive. I have lived up to my part of our agreement. Live up to yours. Destroy Earth. He's a pilgrim. He's waited a long time for this. If your family were massacred at Perone, perhaps you would understand. You should have sent more ships. The Tiger Claw is alive and still a threat.
你都要遵守你嘅。
As you wish.
They have breached the ship. You must destroy the Navcom.
Paladin, I'm okay. I'm at the bridge. I kept them from scuttling the ship.
一個憂傷嘅人士憑膽去推山登開，開喺佢原本佢嘅半空之上，跟住佢跳開嘅眼望舒適。我哋睇到個船牌係七分嘅，我哋之前聽到我嘅朋友係鼓奏俾我哋嘅時，好開始打狀態。係啊，你嘅朋友真有心啊！開係先苦，佢等咗好耐嘅啦。你哋呢啲人真係欺負係個真事啊！
Karathi's too big to escape.
或者你唔做人。
All right, there we have it. All the Karathi stuff that was, or most of the Karathi stuff that was cut out of the movie in higher quality than I've ever seen before. That is pretty awesome. And, you know, we'll stick that up on the CIC YouTube along with the finished cut and the making of stuff so folks can look at it as they want, but you can see how much work went into making those shots look, the shots that survived, to make them look the way they did in the finished movie. So it's one of those things where there's no great victory, but there are a lot of heroes involved in the process. And that is it for the confidential section of the Confederation Handbook. Oh, I should point out, look, I found my cross. It was in a bag next to me. So we're back. But that is it for our show tonight. Unless anybody has any questions, wants to talk about anything else, we can I'll be going and working on the timeline tonight and tomorrow, adding all the stuff that we saw mentioned in this section of the book. And next time, in a couple days, if folks are interested, we'll move on to the top secret part. And there's a lot to talk about there. They think there's only 4 or 5 articles, but they are big topics. We've got Pegasus Naval Base. We've got command officer profiles, including that one I mentioned with the rifle shot. We're going to talk about the Skipper missile and how it fits into the continuity. And, the exploratory ship. We'll talk about that story, what they changed about it for the movie, why they changed it, how maybe the original version is still right. We'll go over all of that, and I'll collect plenty of media. I already know what scene cut from the movie I'm going to ask AD to put together for that one. But we'll do that next week. I hope folks out there, if anybody watches this, you enjoy it. And keep Wing Commandering. I'll see you all soon. And if anyone wants to contribute something or come on the show or do anything or have questions you want to see me talk about, I don't have anything better to do. So join me. Let's have some fun. Wing Commander fun. All right. I need to sign off.